Vietnam is an amazing and incredibly rewarding place to travel, but the truth is it's also really challenging and a very confusing country in a lot of ways too. That unfortunately means there's lots of potential planning mistakes and very expensive oversights and things you need to know before you even think about visiting. So just a quick catch up if you're new around here, this is the 11th and final video from our Vietnam series. We used to live in Hoi An and recently spent a month traveling the length of the country all over again, and we realized it's quite important to share a vital list of things you need to know before you visit. And I've got close to 30 tips today, split into these 5 sections, loads of expenses, and at the end, the unexpected highlight of our travels and our number 1 tip for you. Possibly the coolest thing about Vietnam is how varied the country is. There are cities, beaches, caves, rice fields, old towns, sand dunes. It's just incredible what you can find once you start exploring around this country. Something to keep in mind is if one of those things or types of holiday stands out more to you, you might want to work your seasons around that. But also, don't stress it because it is almost impossible to get it right, and that is because the country is so long and skinny. So from north to central to south are all different seasons rotating throughout the year, and you just have to kind of work your way around it, but it's amazing either way. Our recommendation is actually to go from north to south, and the reason being is it's pretty hectic once you start in Hanoi, and it's quite busy up in that area. The further south you go, you start to discover more beaches, it starts to get more calm, it gets a lot more green before you hit Ho Chi Minh, but that's kind of the way that we would go. Which ties over into another thing, and this isn't for everybody, but Vietnam is an incredible country to travel solo, and I did this as my first solo backpacking trip ever before I met with Stace. Because the country is long and thin, unlike somewhere like Thailand, you meet people very easily, and it's very well set up for backpackers and homestays and so on, because people are either going north to south or they're going south to north, and you can find your people and travel along with them. Which, whether you're solo or family, friends, whatever it might be flexible. Because the country is so varied, book some things in advance and have those anchor points, as Stace and I like to call them, but also we recommend that you roll with the punches a little bit. You might find that some places surprise you more than you anticipated. There's always accommodation available, and if you're flexible, you can really take advantage of making the ultimate trip. Visas need to be somewhere at the start here because you'll never get the chance to actually explore the country unless you follow this particular step. You more than likely will need a visa. They tend to be 90 days. There's a single entry available for 635,000 dong and a multi-entry if you plan to come and go a few times for 1.3 million dong. I don't have much footage specifically of these next couple of things, but I do want to mention changing money at home into Vietnamese dong is a bad idea. The best option is to bring cash in your home currency into the country, and the percentage you'll lose on an exchange while you're there will be so much smaller. You can also bring your card, and there's a link below for the ones that we recommend to travel with various currencies, and there are ATMs available. You can withdraw money generally between 2 to 4 million dong at a time, although there is sometimes 100,000 dong withdrawal fee. You're gonna wanna have an eSIM to stay connected, and our go-to is SIM Local. Honestly, much like Vietnam, the biggest thing is just how affordable their plans are. They are so much cheaper than their competitors. Their price per gigabyte is insanely good value. Choice is another big reason because you can pick from multiple options for each destination, both in terms of the network as well as the data allowance. And if you're traveling with lots of other devices other than your phone, maybe you're one of those big iPad families. They are not going to stop you from hotspotting your data, unlike some of the other competitors out there. So we connect often from our laptops when either the Wi-Fi at the hotel is a bit average or we're out and about and making some travel plans. And best yet, we can get you 10% off using the code Dane and Stacey for any eSIM, by the way, not just if you're traveling to Vietnam. So check the link in the description below, use the code Dane and Stacey. Thank you for supporting us, and thank you to SIM Local for sponsoring this portion of the video. On the topic of affordability, Vietnam is insanely cheap, man. A local beer is going to cost between 12 and 20,000. In a bar, you might pay more like 50,000. A bottle of water is generally 5,000. You may pay 10 to 20,000 for a larger size. Local rice or noodle dish, the average is 50,000, but that could really stretch anywhere from 20 up to 100,000. A similar dish could also be more like 100 to 200k in a more touristy area. It's essentially the same thing and often with less flavor, if I'm honest. Banh mi is a great local dish, and that is average price that we found of about 35,000. We did also go into one of the highest rated places we could find, and their menu said it was going to be 200k, and so we left because the ones for 35 are delicious. But the most delicious thing about Vietnam is definitely the coffee, and that averages at about 25,000. Generally it's cold, by the way. A can of Coke is 10,000. So to put that together, if you go out for sort of a nice meal like the place we recommend in Hoi An, where we had 2 dishes, 2 drinks between us, we spent 204,000, and that's at your average kind of nice-ish sit-down place. Massages start at around 200,000. 400 to 600 if you go somewhere fancier. Do you get what you pay for? We're not really sure, because we had some friends that got absolutely murdered by an expensive one, and then others that paid 200,000 and she just massaged with one hand, and our friend peeked and saw that she was on her phone. So, you know, take that as you will. Transport is so well priced. They use Grab, and 30 to 50,000 was our average, and that could be anywhere from sort of 5 to 15 minute trips. I don't think we ever spent more than that. If you want to rent a scooter, if you want to rent a scooter, 180,000 is the average price for 24 hours. There's lots of links below for accommodation options. It is incredibly cheap. A simple room would cost you about 350,000. A reasonable place with a nicer pool is more like 950,000. We stayed in a really nice place with an incredible location, so you're starting to tip in a few more sort of costly things. And we paid 1.4 million per night, and we were stoked with that in Hoi An. Local food in Vietnam is absolutely amazing, but just keep in mind that anywhere that has a proper menu or somebody greeting you or air conditioning, you're probably going to pay twice the price. But does the quality match the comfort? We're not really sure. Western food isn't great, unfortunately, though, and is often quite overpriced and very bland. Strangely, we mentioned this in a vlog or two, the Greek food, though, is great. What's even better is the coffee scene. They use Robusta coffee beans. It's way stronger, more caffeine compared to Arabica. You can get normal fresh milk, but often the coffees come with condensed milk. A lot of calories, but it's flavoursome. The ice is safe to drink, though, and we get this question a lot around Bali too. I mean, not necessarily everywhere. I wouldn't buy it from a random bloke standing by himself, but generally speaking, the ice trucks deliver all over the place to these different businesses, so it is good to drink. Do not drink the water from the taps, though. Buy bottled water everywhere you go. You'll often get it supplied at your accommodation anyway, so you chuck that in the fridge and just keep a couple in rotation. If you do get sick, and this can happen anywhere, but Vietnam is quite a raw country, there are pharmacies everywhere, and you can buy antibiotics over the counter. For about 80,000, you can get a course of amoxicillin. But the good thing is, you don't have to go to a pharmacy to pick up some hydration, because at the convenience stores you can get things like Revive, Pocari Sweat, and Aquarius for about 15,000. And they have got electrolytes and vitamins and all that kind of goodness in them too. When it comes to transport, it's really important to know that the roads and driving in Vietnam are absolute chaos. They commit and focus only on themselves and do exactly what they want, often without indicating. So that means that overtaking is crazy, it all seems very unsafe, and they do not hesitate, which is an important thing to know when it comes to crossing the road. And you've probably seen these videos online before. What you have to do is the same thing that they do, and you just have to commit and be predictable. They will move around you. The problems happen when you're on a bike, a scooter, or you're walking, you're crossing the road, and you appear to hesitate. And that indecision is what causes problems, and then they don't know how to predict your movements. Speaking of scooters, though, I mentioned it already. If you can drive a scooter or a motorbike, it is the best way to explore Vietnam. It is also the craziest place you will ever drive a bike, but as long as you follow the advice that I've mentioned here, you'll be grand. If not, though, completely understand that. Transport is incredibly cheap, and I'll leave a bunch of links below. Trains and buses are definitely an option, especially the overnight, because there's a lot of distances between the different stops in Vietnam. If I'm honest, though, safety is questioned a little bit on some of those. You just have to keep your wits about you. Don't go sleeping and leaving your stuff lying everywhere, and if you're street smart, you'll be fine. Flying domestically is also an option. There are a couple of airlines that support that, but we don't recommend it because you miss so much goodness that we found in the middle. But just for your general day-to-day stuff, Uber isn't really a thing, so Grab is the alternative there. It's essentially the exact same app. You can also book your transfers, and for some of those, I recommend that you highly do as well, especially for airports. Again, I'll have a link with some great pricing below for that. And for our final general must-knows, Vietnam is hot AF. We got up to about 38 degrees, which can feel quite hectic and like you're walking around in an oven. You will not really like the way that you look. You'll feel dehydrated. We all do. So you just kind of don't need to pack much and just go with the flow. What you should pack is something to cover your shoulders when you go into temples and pagodas though. You don't really need to. You can buy these from locals and it's just cheaper and nicer to have your own and to follow the rules. Language barrier isn't massive. You'll be pleased to know that English has improved a lot in the last 10 years or so. We were very surprised at just how great it was and how widespread English was spoken as we traveled around, including in things like menus and stuff as well. We've already mentioned that the internet can be a bit average. You do want to be connected, but you don't necessarily want to be churning through your sim local data, so I would recommend that you download things like Google Maps, Google Translate, and then offline shows like Netflix and whatever else before you go. Keep in mind that tailoring in Hoi An in terms of getting suits and dresses and custom clothes made is very popular, and Hoi An in particular is the hotspot to get that done. You have to be very specific, and the best advice we got from everybody that got stuff made in our tour group was bring an example item so that they can match it. In terms of shopping, you're going to want to bring your own toiletries. There are not very many shopping malls around, and a lot of the stuff you find in the markets will be sort of trinkets and typical holiday stuff and or fake. I was expecting a lot more tech shopping, and there's just really not that much other than the main cities and Ho Chi Minh in particular. A sad thing that you do need to recognize is that it is still a very, I don't want to say dirty, but there is a lot of rubbish. Locals don't really understand the importance of rubbish and recycling and bins, for example. Kids are being taught, but I specifically remember an example where we were out with our friends Cyrus and Leah finished the bottle and our driver just took it off her and biffed it over a cliff down onto the beach, and we were like, really? To wrap this whole video up with something that was the most unexpected thing of our entire trip, and kind of goes against the negative thing that I just said, but the people of Vietnam is what makes the country so special, and it is also our #1 tip for you is to explore. Vietnam is the kind of country that you definitely get out of it what you put in. You are rewarded for adventure. You are rewarded for being open and traveling and exploring and opening your eyes to new things and new experiences, whether that's booking random tours, walking and exploring, speaking to local people, being adventurous with food. You'll be rewarded with incredible experiences, and it's the people that we met along the way that just made the trip so incredibly special, and honestly, reflecting back on footage, almost emotional at just how much these people helped us have a whole new view on a country that we had already spent a lot of time in and lived in Hoi An, but we were much more insular because of kind of the journey that we were on. So be open, travel, explore, and you will love Vietnam as much as we do. I hope this video was helpful anyway. Definitely, if you've got any other recommendations for other people that'll read these in the comments, please jump in and check them. Thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I appreciate that these are never as interesting when Stace isn't here dropping her classic one-liners, or someone for me to just kind of banter and hang out with. Sorry this has all taken so long to get this video out. It's just that over the Christmas period we have actually just taken some time off, but we've got some incredible plans, including Japan, that we can't wait to share with you starting next week. So we will both catch you then.